Hey everyone, welcome to Nerdkast episode 3. We are going to be talking about the Harry Potter film franchise today. With me as always is my boy Austin Bennett. Say hello, Austin.
That's me. Hello.
Henry and Bo were not able to make it this evening, so we were lucky enough to find two experts in the field of all things Potter. First off is one of my oldest friends, Daniel Wilkerson, aka The Keg. Welcome, Daniel.
Hey, how you doing?
Great to have you here. Thanks for joining us. And my bandmate and good friend and cousin, actually, Kevin Sullivan. Welcome, Kevin. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks. Always good to be talking about all things Potter related.
Oh, yeah. Is that the right way to put it? That sounds kind of strange. I've never said that before. All things Potter. Potter. I don't know. Anyways, you know how we do this. We're just going to start off with a couple awesome questions here. I don't know about awesome, but they are questions. So first one, we'll go to Austin first. When did you first get into Harry Potter? And have you read the books?
Well, I'm at the perfect age of 25 to where I essentially cannot remember life without Harry Potter. The first book, I believe, was released in 97. Don't quote me on that. But the film, Philosopher's Stone or Sorcerer's Stone, whichever you prefer, was released in 2001. And I still remember getting that VHS tape one year for Christmas. I believe it was Christmas of 2001. And it was obviously a great Christmas present because here I am, 20 years later, actually, can you believe it? 20 years later,
That's
still talking about, still talking about Harry Potter all those years later. I think you had a second part to that question. Have I read all the books? And absolutely, twice through.
Wow. Impressive. Most impressive. Daniel, why don't you follow up? When did you get into Harry Potter and have you read the books?
See, I got into Harry Potter about second grade? A long time ago, right when
I think we were
right
about 7 then, yeah.
Yeah, I feel it was like either right when the third book came out was when it was being read to me by a teacher in school. But yeah, after that though, I started reading them on my own for a while, and then man, I've gotten all the way through the books and then all the way through the movies too.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Kevin.
So my mom actually attempted to read them to me when I was in kindergarten, and it kind of went a little over my head. So when I got into first grade, we started, and that's when it was just such a bonding moment for my mom and I, because we were in them together, and it got to a point later on. Well, yes, I've read all the books, and I think that's when I originally got exposed, and then it was great because within a couple of years, that's when I started seeing the trailers and stuff in theaters, and I was always it was always November that a movie would come out from them originally, and so it was just waiting on that, and when finally seeing it was just incredible. It blew my mind, and it was everything I could have hoped it would ever be,
For sure. Our Aunt Wendy got me the first 2, I believe. And I remember it must have been 6 or 7. I can't remember when the first one came out. But I remember getting into bed. It was dark one night and I was little and, kind of scared of my own shadow still. And I opened up the first book and the first chapter was called The Boy Who Lived. And I just closed that thing up. I was like, nope, and just put it back on the shelf. Not doing that. But eventually I started reading them and they were great. And what's funny is I remember when I was living in North Carolina, Kevin, you and your family came down to visit me, and BJ came in one day, and because you guys had the books before I did, I think it was book maybe 4 or 5 or whatever, and I had started reading, and he was like, "We're here for 3 days. You can read as much as you want." And I was like, okay. Well, I took a break at one point. I was watching TV. He's like, "Why did you stop reading the books?" I was just like, "Oh, I guess I should get back to that." But it wasn't that serious, but it's just one of those funny memories. But anyways, next question. We'll go to Daniel first on this one. What are your opinions on the overall tone of the series? And when I say the series, I'm particularly concerned about the movies, in your opinion.
Let me see. So the movies, so the tone for the movies has this kind of arc to it. Like, it starts off, a bit lighthearted at first, and as it goes down through the movies, it gets darker and darker until you're at the Deathly Hallows, and then everything is, everything, the whole Wizarding World just gets uprooted.
Yeah, it gets rough by 6 and 7.
Oh yeah, like once Umbridge takes Hogwarts, then everything just starts going downhill from there. But yeah, no. That being said, I enjoyed it.
For sure, man. I'm with you on that. Kevin, what about you?
So when I was thinking about this, I was like, the tone, yes, I definitely agree with Daniel as far as it starting off lighthearted, and it does get darker, but what you really come to like recognize about Harry Potter is that at the end of the day, there is always hope. Like even in the darkest of times, when Dumbledore is sitting there saying, there's always light in darkness, no matter what. It's like, that's the kind of vibe that it gets to me. And so that tone really does, I think, reflect throughout the movie franchise, is that there is still hope, and it goes along with the story in the books.
Austin, expand on that. And I want to tee this up for you a little bit. Last week, when we were talking about the Phantom Menace, we were discussing a little bit about the themes and the the undercurrent themes of the entire Star Wars franchise. And my answer to one of that was hope. So that's interesting that this is kind of parallel. And I can see that hope and things like teamwork, hard work, stuff like that, those really are big underpinnings of this whole thing. What say you, Austin?
I was going to touch on something that Kevin said with the help of, or the idea of hope. And Dumbledore quote, I'm pretty sure it's Dumbledore, came to mind, where I believe it's at the end of either movie number 4 or 5, where they're in the common room and Dumbledore says to Harry, help will always come to those who ask for it. I don't think that's a direct quote, but I know I'm close. And my thing is, and Daniel said the same thing as well, there is that childlike innocence of the first about 2 films, I'd say. And then gradually we as an audience also mature with the movies as they progress. And for me, it was the sense of family is what you make of it. In that series, we see as Harry struggles with, the concept of not having a family, and the only family he has is absolutely despicable. They're just awful people, especially towards him. But, he eventually finds comfort and family in the Weasleys, especially. And there are other characters like Sirius and Lupin who kind of have that parental father figure role. But I think Harry Potter is more all about family, hope as well. But family is definitely what you make of it, I think, is a strong tone and a strong characteristic of all of these films.
Yeah, perhaps family that you choose and not family that is blood related to you so much. I think that's a good call. I agree with that.
That's huge. That's huge.
Does anybody want to expand on that real quick, or?
I think Austin kind of said it all.
I was going to say, I think you nailed it, man.
I have the notes.
The notes are strong with this one.
Yes.
Kevin, to you now, what are your thoughts on the music of the series and specifically John Williams' score?
So, the music in Harry Potter is everything. Like going from, reading those books and everything, like there's always that trepidation when you're about to go and watch a film based on a book, like a book that you really truly love. And it's like something for me that throughout just captures that magic all the more. Like, yes, it's a movie about magic, but John Williams' score adds the magic to it. I mean, just those really subtle notes in the very, very beginning, and then going on to Hedwig's theme and everything, and then like the whole score around the Quidditch matches, you're just so hyped, based off all of those. And it's but then coming in really somber when, you're dealing with things like the chess match in the first film. And then, when you're on from there, when you finally see Voldemort for the first time. I mean, it's just it captures the mood and emotion so much more. And I remember that being a soundtrack that like my friend had, and I just like it was listening to the tunes myself, like because it just like captured that emotion, like, and I could visualize myself there in the movie just by listening.
100%. It's funny how almost every single movie John Williams does the score for, whether it's Star Wars, whether it's Harry Potter, whether it's Jurassic Park, not only can you hear the song immediately and picture exactly in the movie when it shows up, but it's also like its own character, like almost this astral presence in the background, because it's just so visceral and almost tangible. Like it almost interacts with the textures of the visuals and the characters. It's personally, I can't say enough about John Williams. I am so happy to live in the age of John Williams and have gotten as much of his stuff as we have. Austin, what say you?
A couple things. Yes, I remember also having the soundtrack, the CD soundtrack to Philosopher's Stone, and I used to drive my whole entire family up a wall with it because I used to love listening to the soundtrack. My sisters hated me for it because I would like play it in the car. I loved it so much. And it's a long soundtrack. It's a long CD. It's over an hour long. So, yeah, I think the music of John Williams speaks for itself.
Mm-hmm.
Even as far back as Jaws and before that. I'm not too familiar with any work before then. Yeah, it is a character on its own. And whenever I hear Hedwig's theme, especially, I'm taken back to being 6 years old watching Harry Potter for the first time. It puts you in that moment, not just in the film, but like where you were when you first heard it. It's a lovely soundtrack. And funny enough, I didn't realize this till taking notes for this talk, that John Williams only composed the music for the first 3 films.
I did not know that.
I didn't know that either. But I think it's incredible how you hear, callbacks and influences to his original score throughout the remaining movies that he does not compose for.
Very similar to Jurassic Park in that sense, where I think he only did the score for the first, maybe the second one, and then after that it's like original score by, and then like, the actual composer for that specific film comes in. But yeah, no, definitely. Daniel, anything to add, my friend?
One of the things, and Kevin touched on this a little bit, one of the things that I was really surprised about from going to the books was how well the soundtrack, how it related to the Harry Potter world. I was actually very surprised by that. Like I was wondering how are they going to get like the music to work, because as we were reading it, we didn't really have music going on in the back of our head, no, and it just fit. It just fits so incredibly well. But yeah, that's really all I have to add. Everyone else got it pretty well.
Awesome.
I wanted to add one thing, is that I actually recently read Philosopher's Stone back in, I think, October of 2020. And I started realizing that I think, at least with the first book in my head, you cannot read that book after seeing the movie and hearing the soundtrack and not have both just playing in your head at the same time. They accompany each other so well. Almost perfectly. So
very similar to Lord of the Rings for me. Like if I ever go back and reread even The Hobbit, I know it's Lord of the Rings specific music that's playing in my head, but any Tolkien I ever read now is just Funny story too. I think actually the first time I went and saw Sorcerer's Stone in theaters was at your birthday, Kevin. I think you had a birthday up in the Egyptian. That was cool.
At Arundel Mills, yes.
Yeah. Fun facts all around. All right.
If I could just add one thing.
By all means.
On all the scores, I think that, and this is just a theory, I could be totally wrong, but I think that John Williams, where he started to branch, like obviously you have like the really epic themes in movies like Indiana Jones and and Star Wars and all that stuff. But I think one movie that really set him up to make the Harry Potter film like scores and stuff, I think, was E.T. because that soundtrack to me is just like is so in tune with emotion. And it's funny because Spielberg actually that was his first film ever, wanting to have more of an emotion based film. So John Williams' score really fits that emotion. And I think his evolution really came through from E.T. to Harry Potter, in my opinion.
I think John Williams has like some 29 Oscar nominations. Like if there's any question as to whether he is the GOAT when it comes to Oscar score or to just movie scores in general. Austin, let's move on to, okay, what are some of the best performances from the series? And before you answer, the caveat here is not who are your favorite characters, but who, actor or actress-wise, do you think brought it the best? Who interpreted the character the best? You can take this any way you want. What are your thoughts?
Well, I actually interpreted your question perfectly then. I have
fantastic.
I have 5 examples, and I don't have like essays on them at all.
Damn.
But just looking at my notes here, the first one I wrote down was actually Gilderoy Lockhart. I think as a kid, I was just thoroughly annoyed by him, just beginning of the movie to the end of the movie. But I absolutely love that character. Not necessarily referring to his like portrayal of the character from the novel, but just seeing this man be hired as a complete joke to Dumbledore, making a quick reference to the book. Sure. He's so far up his own ass. It's just comical to me to watch this guy just be like an absolute loser, but like still taking all the credit from like all these famous witches and wizards and just getting slapped in the face throughout the entire movie. It's just perfect. And I laugh at it now.
And Kenneth Branagh's kind of over the top performance of it really sold it to me too. I thought he did a great job.
Next I just want to do a quick shout out. I'm not sure if he's like in my like top 5. Alistair Moody, Brendan Gleeson.
Oh yeah.
One thing I really liked is that, especially in Goblet of Fire, he's portraying essentially 2 people combined into one character, because he's under the Polyjuice potion the entirety of that film until the very end. So it is kind of interesting that you have to put
Barty Crouch Jr., right?
Yes.
Correct.
So it's interesting that he has to kind of put the head of another character into the body of someone else. I think it's done beautifully.
He might be like what you were talking about with like Christopher Lee and as Count Dooku in Star Wars. I would say Brendan Gleeson as Mad-Eye Moody is probably that guy for me, because he is not in those movies enough. He's so good at being Mad-Eye Moody, and just that, oh Potter, what are we gonna do? Love it.
And another character I grew to love with age was actually Umbridge. She's so despicable and so evil, but just what's her name? I might get it wrong. Excuse me if I do. Imelda Staunton is her actress's name, and you're meant to hate this woman, and you do. It's perfect. It really is. Like, you're so happy when she's carried off by the centaurs in the Forbidden Forest. At least I am.
I don't know anybody who talks about the Harry Potter films who doesn't immediately say, God, I hate Umbridge. Like, I hate her.
But you're meant to. And like, she easily could have been like the most like lovable villain, which I guess she is, but it's like you love to hate her. At least I do.
Oh yeah.
I'll touch on Lupin real quick. I feel like he's a fan favorite of most fans. He's again a Christopher Lee example where we just need more of him on screen. I love how calm and collective he is through all of his scenes. I love his interactions with Harry. I think he really is that first taste that Harry gets of like a real role model father figure. And it's a shame that, again, he's kind of shafted at the end of the 3rd movie.
Yeah.
And this is something that, again, taking these notes down, I realized Rupert Grint steals the show throughout like the entire first half of Harry Potter. Like, I go back and watch like certain scenes from especially Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets. Rupert Grint is just on point as Ron Weasley. I really is. I think he's just not necessarily over the top, but I love how kind of colorful of a character he is. And I think he does the best job at portraying like the widest range of emotions and feelings like in the present moment. That's just me. I could be alone on that. I know like
I'm with you.
I know like I know like they're universally loved, like the main three cast members, but I really think Ron steals the show more so than Harry and Hermione do.
Bloody hell.
And just as a quick shout out, Jason Isaacs as Lucius Malfoy. He's so good. He's so intimidating to me. Like, he is like a real threat to me in those movies. Not so much like the main antagonist. Like, Lucius Malfoy, I think, is someone to fear.
And to see his progression through the movies too, especially in the last couple, where he's just like, you can just see the visible like terror. Like, I don't think a lot of actors could have sold just the position the Malfoys were in towards the end with, like, you know, serving Voldemort and him showing up at their you know, at their manor and stuff and kind of taking it over. Like, I think he's just he does a lot with no words in the last few films. I think I love Jason Isaacs.
Broken man by the end of the series, and
for sure
you can see the intimidation just throughout his entire body whenever Voldemort is just within the same room as him, or even the thought of him.
It's like, give me your wand, punk. He's like, okay. Daniel, why don't you keep this show on the road? What do you say?
See, for me, actually, it was Umbridge. Umbridge won. Like, you know, same also said, like, you love to hate that character.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. So that was one. Alan Rickman. I thought he did a fantastic job as Snape.
Always, my friend.
And he was actually told by Rowling about Rowling about his past. You know, about this character's past with Lily. And he was told that like day one.
Wow.
And he had to keep that in mind while he was doing everything, while he was acting. Like,
that's such a great thing too, that like he held that for all those years and didn't, like, nobody knew until they read Deathly Hallows what that it was all about and everything. And he really, like, you in the books and in the movies, they really do a great job of, like, you don't trust him. You know that he's like, Dumbledore vouches for him, but you don't trust him at all. And everybody's like, no, Snape, he's fine. I mean, he was a Death Eater, but he's fine. He's you know, and you're like, wait, he was a what? I'm a what?
I know a couple people who are like genuinely shocked of how that turned out. Just the reveal of Snape's like true past and like his true identity. Like, some people did not see that coming at all. It kind of amazed me, actually. I was like, oh, that makes sense. Like, when I saw it, at least.
It was one of the better character backstories that we ever got. And like, I never really perk up when I watch exposition or flashback scenes, but whenever they're doing like the occlumency and stuff like that, and they start talking about his past, I'm like listening for like clues and just all the little through lines and stuff. And probably shout out to whoever played young Snape in those flashbacks too, because I mean, whoever cast that did it perfectly, I thought. But did you have any others, Daniel, or?
No, that was it for me, actually.
Kevin, what do you got?
Daniel, I'm going to agree with you on Alan Rickman. Obviously, my shirt says it all.
Sorry, I didn't see that. I would have taken it.
And I got a tattoo as well, because I love Snape. And Alan Rickman, I think, played him so well. I love, not to go too far on a further question down the list, but I do love Richard Harris playing Dumbledore. Like, I just thought he was incredible. He was so caring in that role, and he like bonded so well with Harry in the first two films. Just loved R.I.P. I really wish he could have done the whole series, but also I'm gonna throw Ivana Lynch playing Luna Lovegood is like just one of those characters. Like, she's such a gem, and it's like, it's not who I pictured, not who I like pictured to play her, but like, I just think she nailed it. You know, she really did it for me in that, you know. Then other shout outs as well. I love Matthew Lewis as Neville.
Yes.
I think Neville Longbottom is just somebody that like you don't see him being anything at all when we first get into the film franchise, and it's just like, but by the end, like Neville's a goddamn hero, and there is just no doubt that he is a Gryffindor through and through. You know?
Oh,
It's like,
100%.
It takes a true to Gryffindor to pull the sword out of that.
100%, yes. And then
I ship Neville and Luna hard too. That's like the perfect matchup. Oh yeah. Oh
Do
yeah.
you?
Who else would he have ended up with? Cho? Like
Neville. Okay, Neville. I can
Lavender
understand.
Brown. She died.
Well, she died.
R.I.P. Let's see. Let me.
I think she got mauled to death by a werewolf too. Poor.
Yeah, Greyback.
Yeah. No, that was rough. And then Maggie Smith as McGonagall is just wonderful. She got the strictness, but also like that caring nature at the same time. Like she nailed that. And I will end on this one, or actually two more. Robbie Coltrane as Hagrid.
Yep.
Was wonderful.
Shouldn't have said that. Should not have said that.
Yes, exactly. And I just love at the at the end of the second film when he comes back in the Great Hall and like prior to all the applause, like he's like I just wanted to say if it weren't for you three, I'd still be in there. So here's me thanking you. Just so like humble, wonderful. And I will end. I thought that Helena Bonham Carter playing Bellatrix Lestrange was a great one too. I mean, 100%. She captured that, and she just does the damn thing. Whenever she's in a role, she just does it.
I am in 100% disagreement, Kevin. I apologize.
Hot take.
Hot take.
I wish I could. I don't, but I wish I did just skip all the scenes that have Bellatrix Lestrange in them, apart from Order of the Phoenix. It's a part of a topic I'll touch a little bit later on, but I was never really threatened by her, and I think it kind of came to a case of maybe overacting. I don't know if that's something I could actually argue. I just did not like that character. I did not want her like on my TV screen. I just don't.
Well, probably because she kills Sirius, so that just puts you on the wrong foot immediately.
Yes.
I also think that's a beautiful scene though. So like,
oh yeah, it's crazy to think that those two were cousins. Yeah,
they were cousins. Yeah. Yes,
but I'll pick it up. Right,
don't be getting any ideas.
Yeah, no. I'll pick it up right from there though. Beatrix Lestrange in Deathly Hallows Part 1, towards the very end, where she's carving in mudblood into Hermione's arm, and she's just like screaming in agony. Like that scene is specific. Like I'm not a huge fan of Part 1 in its entirety, just because it's a big like setup film, and that's not their fault. I get why they did it and everything, but that scene in particular, if there's that whole movie, that scene in particular sits with me just like to show like how evil she was. And I love, and it's fine if it doesn't land for you. That's everybody perceives it differently. But I thought her like just Helena Bonham Carter is so good at those like over the top, like just batshit crazy roles, whether it's like the lady who bakes all the pies in Sweeney Todd, or just any of the roles that she's ever been in like Fight Club, things like that. Like she's just so good at that, in my opinion. And I thought she played that great. I can't really argue with any of your guys' picks. Yeah. They're all so strong. I mean, I'm so glad that we touched on as many as we did. I'll just bring up, I think Gary Oldman and his limited screen time as Sirius Black was great. I think we didn't, besides Rupert Grint in the first movie, which I totally agree. Rupert Grint is probably one of the more underappreciated actors in the whole franchise. The two Weasley parents, I absolutely adore. Yes. Like so much. He's just like Arthur Weasley. I could watch the scene where he shows up in Chamber of Secrets at the breakfast table, and he's just like, who are you? Like, tell me the precise function of a rubber duck. Yes. I love that kind of stuff. So those two, and just like quick, I mean, you guys nailed them. Alan Rickman, Richard Harris. I got to shout out Michael Gambon though. we'll probably talk more about this a little later on, but like, it's unfortunate Richard Harris died. I don't know anybody else who probably could have came, and there's probably some actors who could have, but he really took that role, made it his own. There wasn't this like weird lag. Like, you watch Prisoner of Azkaban and it's like, it's a little bit different, whatever. But I think especially as the series went on, with Richard Harris being as old as he was, I don't know if he could have done some of those scenes and stuff. Like, there would have been a tremendous amount of body doubles, kind of like Christopher Lee in the Hobbit movies, where you could just tell he was so old, and you know damn well that's not him fighting the necromancer at Gundabad and everything. So that kind of stuff. So Michael Gambon, shout out to you. And I gotta bring up Ralph Fiennes as Voldemort. I thought they did
Don't say the name.
They set him up for what, almost a full 4 movies before they really brought out Voldemort. And I didn't really necessarily, when I first watched it, as a younger person, really appreciate kind of the character design and stuff. I was like, he doesn't have a nose, what's going on here, and all this stuff. But then you start thinking about it, it's like, not only was he a parcel tongue, but he literally broke his soul and his essence into 7 parts, which is like unheard of even in the wizarding world. Like, this is like completely, just dark stuff that he was doing. And I don't know, like, as it went on and everything, like the way subtle things, like the way he held his wand, almost like a composer does, like the amount of respect and just kind of like I guess you could say like the raw talent. Like, he is basically, Tom Riddle was kind of the Anakin Skywalker of the wizarding world for me, where he's just like so powerful and so raw talent that, it's awesome to watch. And, I forget the actor's name, but the guy who played Wormtongue, I thought probably perfectly cast,
Oh yeah.
He just naturally, kind of, unfortunately for him, and I'm not trying to make him feel bad by any means. He doesn't care about my opinion, obviously, but like, he looks the part of like this kind of like rodent like Weasley creature type person who would have sold out the Potters to Voldemort when shit was going down. So, I thought he did a great job. And I mean, really, just all the teachers. I thought Emma Thompson as
Professor
Trelawney, thank you. And Flitwick. I'm forgetting. Warwick Davis is Flitwick. I mean, the list just goes on and on. We were really spoiled with the quality of people in these films. Even somebody like, I didn't realize until Twilight came out, Robert Pattinson is Cedric Diggory. So we got to see Edward Cullen murdered before he was even Edward Cullen, which is kind of wild to think about. I'm sure a lot of haters probably were fans of that once they realized it. But I mean, he's a top-notch talent, was just doesn't even crack the top probably 20 characters most people bring up. So that just speaks to, I think, the level of performances we got. But let's keep this thing rolling. So did I start that with Austin? Let's start this one with Daniel.
All right.
Who would you have liked to see more from in the films, and who do you think you might have gotten too much of, if anybody?
You see, so this question, is this people who were in the films, or was it you're talking about people who were like cut from the films too?
Yeah, so like characters that you might have known about in the books or heard about, through one mean or another, like whether it was just a background character. Like, is there anybody that comes to mind that you would have really liked to be like, oh, that might be a cool character?
Peeves.
Yeah.
Peeves.
I was waiting for it.
Peeves. Oh, 100%.
Nailed it.
because so when they first had the initial trailer for the first one, right? He was in the trailer. He was in there. I'm like, yeah, Peeves is gonna be in there. And then like I sat through the movie, and don't get me wrong. I was really excited for the movie, and it was a great movie. But I remember afterwards asking myself, yo, where's Peeves?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, and then of course they didn't have in the first one. They didn't keep him at all for the rest of them, and that's something I would have liked to have seen more of. I would have liked to have seen more of him.
Great call. Anybody else, or?
Let's see. I would have liked to see like two of my favorite characters throughout the series. Like, and you did see them, but I wanted more of them. Fred and George. Like, I always want more Fred and George. Like, you cannot go wrong. Like, and they, I love the sequence in the third one where they're giving Harry the map and stuff, like the Marauders map, and really like, taking him under his wing and everything else. It's like they were the original Hogwarts badasses. I mean, they just did their thing, and just like, I would like to have seen a little bit more than that, but of course, then you got a ton of that in Order of the Phoenix when they're just like fucking causing mayhem, which I loved,
Mm-hmm.
It was the perfect send-off, it really was. And to happen to Umbridge of all characters, it's just like the icing on the cake there.
Oh, yeah.
Austin, what say you?
I think I might have touched on it, but I'll take any scene with Harry and Lupin just any day. He was the one professor I wished, the professor for Defense Against the Dark Arts, that I just wished stuck around. I know it was a recurring theme that every year we got a new professor, but oh my God, I wanted him to stick around so bad. And at the time, I don't think I had read the book, so here I was watching the whole movie thinking like, oh, he's gonna come back. No, he doesn't.
Right.
I have others, but like Lupin is definitely like number one.
It stinks because a couple of mine that like would come to mind are like Sirius and Voldemort, and even like just because of who played him, Rufus Scrimgeour and stuff like that. But it's like all these characters were not in the books that much and really don't make sense to come in any more than they would have been, or like were already in the films. One like kind of random one just for me personally, because I really would have liked to see their, and it's a subjective thing. I mean, I think they did have enough Ginny Weasley in the movies, but I would have really liked to see them hammer that relationship home, especially in the latter movies a little bit, just so it didn't feel so abrupt. Because I think if you watch the movies and you get to like 4 or 5, and I mean, he's still crushing on Cho a bit and stuff like that, but like, I think you almost get the sense that, oh, he's going to end up with Hermione, because obviously that's what happens in every movie, or a book. He goes with the main chick who's badass and smarter than everybody and stuff like that. Like that makes sense. But I'm so happy that she ended up with Ron, because Ron was like his OG, like ride or die since day one. So I'm so glad he got his due. But yeah, I think Ginny Weasley a little bit, just for the sake of like trying to really bolster that relationship as much as possible. But again, these are like at least 700 page to 1,000 page books being condensed into 2 to 2.5 hours. So I totally understand that there's just, in an ideal world, each one of these movies would have been 4.5 hours long and take like an entire evening to watch. And
yes,
I would be here for it. But real quick, and I'll open this up to anybody who wants to jump in. Is there anybody that you saw too much of and you were just like, just go away?
Well, I already said my hot take of Bellatrix. I just don't enjoy the character. I'm sorry it's such a hot take to you, Kevin, especially,
Wrong.
but like, she's just the one that immediately comes to mind. I don't want to see her. I also, I just don't find myself really caring for, he's in the 7th movie. He's the thief. The real short guy. I can't remember his name now.
Oh, Mundungus.
Yeah,
Fletcher.
He was such a late addition that I'm kind of just like, why are you here? We didn't need this. Why are we introducing like a character that we don't know about this late into the franchise, only to have him pop up for one more scene, which has happened to be like, oh, this is what I did with the locket, and like, other than plot convenience, like, what was your purpose?
Was he even in any other movie other than Part 1 Deathly
Not
Hallows?
movies.
He was supposed to be, his original introduction in the books was in the 5th. Okay. And then you knew him from the 5th to the 6th to the 7th. But in the films, I guess they only added him in the 7th for that part, because that is what happened in the books. But yeah, I hate it when they're like, oh, we're going to eliminate this character because it saves time, but actually, really, we needed him, so now we're going to put him back in, and then out of no context. So
it's like your bedroom closet is too full with shit in it, and then you just like shoving more stuff and like leaning on it, like, get in there.
Yes.
And
actually,
he stinks too, and he can go to hell in my opinion too, because he's the reason Mad Eye Moody died. Like, let's not mince words.
Yes, 100%.
Justice for Mad Eye.
Yes,
There is a young Mad Eye show out there. There's also a fan fiction that I would love to write. It's like a Dean Thomas, Kingsley Shacklebolt, or like in Africa, Wizarding World type show that I would love to make. But
Oh my god, that'd be great.
when,
Can I go? One character that I forgot to mention that I would have actually liked to see a little bit more, because I just thought she nailed it as an actress. The one who played Professor Sprout.
oh
like,
yeah,
like with the whole the Mandrake scene, and she's
I'll just leave him there. He'll be fine.
yeah, it's just she was on the Graham Norton show with Daniel Radcliffe, and at one point she was talking, and they were apparently they needed a swear jar for her around the kids, and she'd be like, "Oh, sorry."
I've seen that video recently. I love it. I know what you're talking about.
She's so great.
Good call.
And she's still recognized in public, which is great. Like, every character is recognized, which I think is great. They're so synonymous with their roles. The actors are.
So this question, I guess, kind of plays off of everything we've just been talking about a little bit. But Kevin, are there elements you thought could have been executed better, whether they're thematic, set pieces, what have you? What do you think could have been done better?
See, I only saw so my favorite book was The Seventh. Okay. And it became my favorite book later because I listened to the audio done by Jim Dale, who was just incredible. And so I would listen, and I've read the seventh book probably more than any other in the series. And it's when they went to do the 2-part movies, part one, I would just get so angry that I had to just turn it off. That was for me. And so the whole build up prior to the scene where they're all the 7 Potters and everything, it's just I did think one element that they added that I thought was actually way more noble in the movie was actually when Hedwig got out of the cage to save Harry, and that's how she died. But in the book it was sitting there, she was just in her cage dead on the ground, and it was very pitiful. So I like that they added that. I don't think that they played a lot on the journey aspect, and I think that it was very important to do that, but obviously, in part one, that just got very boring to see on screen. And at one point, Harry and Hermione are just dancing together, which I'm just what are we doing here?
In the tent. Yeah. It was just listening to the radio because they're depressed and have all sorts of paranoid PTSD going on.
Yes. And I want to bring up too, that in the 6th film, in the very beginning, there's this really odd sequence where Harry is wandering about and about to have a date with a girl, and suddenly on the train platform, and suddenly Dumbledore just randomly shows up and goes, "I'm sure she would have been a nice girl, Harry, but I need your help." What? What? When was Harry ever going and dating or exploring to that extent? I don't know. That just weirded me out.
Kind of a strange beat, but probably meant to just really highlight. I would just assume David Yates just trying to really highlight just how separate and different he is, and he can't be a normal human being, because of course we don't know until the very, very end of part 2 of Deathly Hallows that he is in fact a Horcrux. This whole time Dumbledore's just been leading this kid to his death for 7 years. But what about you, Austin?
Oh, I was going to add real quick. I watched the cinema sins of both Half-Blood Prince and Chamber of Secrets before this started. And it's really funny bringing up the whole Dumbledore bit at the beginning of Half-Blood Prince, where he essentially cock blocks Harry. He's I'm sure she was a fine girl or whatever he had said.
Yeah.
I was just kind of oh, you dick. He knows.
He's the dude from the League. Harry's just but Dumbledore's it is decided.
Mm-hmm. He's I've just learned to go with it at this point.
He just magics a chastity belt on him. Just trump.
Harry's I'm going with it. What was the question again, Spencer? I'm sorry.
Is there anything in any of the movies or just in general throughout this franchise that you think could have been executed better?
Find out.
Consult the Book of Armaments.
The number one thing for me is the Quidditch World Cup in Goblet of Fire.
Yes.
That is like that to me. That is one of my favorite movies. It really is. It's been number one for the longest time. It's not anymore, but it was. But that's so disappointing. The fact that I think it's like the first almost half hour is centered all around the Quidditch World Cup, and there's all this hype, all this build up towards it, and then Cornelius Fudge says, "Let the match begin," and it's just done. And I'm kind of like, "What? Like we didn't get like a kind of like sequence of events or like a highlight reel or anything."
Well,
I guess the Wizarding World doesn't have like instant replay like football does, but like
they don't have Sports Center.
They don't have ESPN.
Sorcerer's Center. But it correct me if I'm wrong. In the books, doesn't like. So the Irish win the World Cup that year.
Ireland wins, but Crumb gets the snitch.
But Crumb gets the snitch,
which is a huge problem. Like,
and it went on for quite a while, if that's the case, because that means they would have had to score over 150 points, which is like what 16 plus goals with the quaffle.
Right, but like Ireland completely annihilates. Was it Bulgaria?
Yes,
Bulgaria.
Like, I like again watching YouTube reviewers talk about it. It's like that's a problem that like a lot of people resonate with. Is just that like why does Crumb catch the snitch? I don't remember what the point difference was, but it's just like if they only got like 2 or 3 more goals, then like he could have caught the snitch, and he is the best seeker in the world. So
part
why
of
not
me
just
wonders,
wait?
and I was thinking about this because I was recently just watching Sorcerer's Stone again, and Wood is giving him the rundown of the rules of Quidditch and stuff, and I was sitting there thinking to myself, it's like, are the seekers really paying attention to the score the whole time? Because remember, is it what's the guy's name who was running? Is it Lee Jordan who runs the score in the first two games? He's got like basically a cash register is what he's keeping score on or something. And like, does everybody else know what the score is? Like, are the seekers so laser focused on the snitch that they're just like, I got to catch this damn thing. Like that's all they care about, that they're not worried about what the score is. It's just like, you find the snitch, you go for it. Because in theory, once the snitch shows up, they're chasing that thing the rest of the match. Like, and that could show up at the beginning. It could show up at it. Like, there were some matches I want to say in the books they talked about that went on for like months or something.
Yes.
Like,
well, I want to say
like a game of cricket.
Right. I want to say in Quidditch Through the Ages, they went into some detail on in regulation play, you have to get past a certain amount of points before a seeker can go catch the snitch. Like they have to wait for a certain period, like of like 60 or more or something like that. Like 60 to 100 points have to already be scored prior to you going for the snitch. And also, as a seeker, there is, I'm not going to say downtime because there's shit flying around. There's freaking bludgers. There's like players all over the place. You're circling the field. You're also keeping an eye on the other seeker because you want to know that they're not seeing something that you missed. So you want to keep an eye on them. You want to keep an eye on the score. And not to mention, like one thing that Crumb did in that Quidditch World Cup in the book that we never got to see in the movie. I know that's such a letdown, but he does this thing called like the Wansky feint or something like that. And he just goes into this steep dive out of nowhere. And so the seeker on Ireland thinks that he's like seen the snitch and basically he goes for it and winds up, the Ireland player almost hits the ground because he thought he was going for the snitch and it was literally just a feint the whole time. Like Crumb didn't see the snitch at all. He just wanted to mess with him.
Very similar to Harry in the very first movie, I believe, when he catches the snitch, because he goes into like almost a complete swan dive before he pulls up at the last second, I believe. I want to say that's the first movie, but maybe that's an allusion to that. I don't know. Stay tuned for a 3-hour, conversation on Quidditch game theory.
Yeah. But I wanted to mention though, I used to have a book called like Quidditch Through the Ages, and I don't know if this is where I read it, but I think actually like according to like Potter lore, we'll call it, the shortest game of Quidditch only lasted like a couple of minutes.
Oh yeah, I think you're right.
So like, I'm not entirely sure, Kevin, if that is true. Your point, whether they have to have like a certain amount of points before you can catch the snitch. I don't know.
I'm not 100%. I'm not 100% sure myself, so I could totally be wrong. But I remember reading something about it.
Yeah, I could also totally be wrong. I have no idea. There's a couple more things I just wanted to point out, though. At least in my personal opinion, I was never really intimidated by Voldemort all that much. Just the portrayal of Voldemort. I will say his reintroduction in the Goblet of Fire is very sinister. It's very menacing. He's kind of reveling in like, I'm back. Like, all my power is here and I have it. These are all my followers. And like, he is a little dramatic in the scene, yes, but like, you're like, this is a force to be reckoned with in
Kill
Voldemort.
the spam.
Yeah, oh my god. Oh my god. That's too soon.
Hi, Edward. I guess he was Team Jacob all along.
Damn.
But I just think they kind of lose focus of how menacing they're supposed to be as the series progresses. Like, I'm not intimidated by the Voldemort we get in like the last movies, especially Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2. Like, it kind of goes into overacting to me, which is the same thing I have against Bellatrix's character, her portrayal at least, where it's just, I'm not being sold that you're actually this person that I meant to fear. Like, you're kind of putting on a show, and like, you're a terrible planner. Like, if you think about Voldemort's plan, especially in the 6th movie, why does it span an entire year? Why is your plan to let Malfoy, a kid who clearly does not want to be like a part of this at all, despite being like someone who hates Harry, to fix this vanishing cabinet? But by the way, Peeves breaks in like either the first or second book. Again, it's not in the movies, but little fun fact, Peeves is the one who breaks the vanishing cabinet. And where was I going? Why does it take so long to do that? And why is Draco the one to do it? And like,
because Voldemort is terrified of Dumbledore, and I don't think he could access. You can't operate in and out of Hogwarts unless you're Dumbledore, I believe. So he'd had absolutely no way to get there, would be my guess. But I'd have to reread the books very carefully to see if there was legitimacy behind that. Plus, was he? Well, I guess he technically was about as fully formed as he was going to be after he returned in Goblet.
Well, here's the deal. Here's the deal with that. Malfoy was originally set to kill Dumbledore because his father, Lucius, fucked up. Basically, like, the whole fiasco at the Ministry at the end of the 5th, like, leads into, it's like he's put Draco in his father's place to get back at Lucius, because Voldemort at the end of the day doesn't care whether Draco lives or dies. This is payback that Lucius fucked up. So he's basically setting Malfoy on this mission that he's pretty sure he's probably going to die in the process, and Voldemort doesn't give a shit because he's one of his servants. You know what I mean? So it's one of those scenarios of like, Draco is the one that went to Morgan and Burke's and, like, saw the whole Vanishing Cabinet thing, and he's the one that talked to Montague, who got stuck in the Vanishing Cabinet in their 5th year, and told him about it, and Malfoy's the one that figured it out. I don't know why it took a whole year, but that was the plot that had to be there. And again, I don't know how much of that goes into the films.
Yeah, plot convenience is like very hit or miss for me. Sometimes it works very well. Sometimes it's just absolutely horrible. And this is one of the ones I kind of struggle with understanding, to where you just happen to have all your Death Eaters come into the castle at the same time where Harry and Dumbledore are off on their mission, recovering the locket from the cave. Maybe it's tackled in the books. I'm really not sure. But like, that's a little too convenient for me, Very
convenient for sure. I'm here for all this super deep cut talk. This is fantastic. Daniel, anything they could have done better, my friend?
The only thing that really comes to mind for me is I would have liked the movies to have been longer so that they could have incorporated more material in.
Sure.
I mean, that goes. That topic is a rabbit hole for me, because I think we should bring intermission back into theater.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like I would
cue the dancing llamas.
I would have loved to have seen a something like what Lord of the Rings did, where they made a whole bunch of material, and they released a cut of it, a big cut of it, but then afterwards they're like, oh, here's the rest of it. All of it, like Harry Potter extended edition.
There's easily probably somewhere in the range of like an hour to 2 hours, I would have to assume, on each of these films that they probably cut for the sake of probably some executive being like, no, it must be 2 to 2.5 or whatever it was. But I 100% agree. I would be there for 3 to 4 hours if you let me. So let's move right along.
I had one more thing, Spencer, if I may.
Go right ahead.
Real quick.
Yeah. God damn it. No, I'm just kidding.
Sorry.
I'm messing with you.
I'll continue this in a later topic I know we have, but I just think the overall acting of Half-Blood Prince is fairly dull. When you kind of just skim through it, it's just there's not a lot happening. I think it kind of suffers from like Attack of the Clones syndrome, where it's just way too much plot development, way too much character development. And I think it kind of suffers as also leading up to Deathly Hallows Part 2. So that's just an opinion I have on Half-Blood Prince. I just don't really like the movie. As much as I love Half-Blood Prince, I know I'm contradicting myself. It's also my least favorite film in the entire franchise. It's dull.
Well, it's like what happens in it is so critically important in his training and stuff. But having said that, really the important stuff happens in the last 15 minutes of the movie.
Right.
They they try to get the locket. Dumbledore gets killed. He finds out that Severus is playing the other side, and it sets it up for part 7, part 1, whatever. And then so you're right in a big way. And I think we were talking about this earlier. I saw the movies in theaters and I didn't own them until much later when I watched them consecutively. So as I'm watching them, when we got to 6 and 7, part 1, I'm like, are we moving along? Like, it was so anticlimactic both time. Like, even when Dumbledore died, by the time I saw it in theaters, like, I know that hit a lot of people hard and stuff, but I knew it was coming. We knew in the books that that's what happened. So I just it just didn't play as much for me because 6, 7, part 1, like, those are drags of a movie as far as bombast and like excitement goes. They're very much, I think you put it best, like Attack of the Clones, like the second act of Attack of the Clones is year 6 and year 7, part 1. Like, it's quite a slog to get through. Okay. And this is
I'm sorry. I'm always interrupting, and I'm so sorry. I had a question that kind of extended off of the executed better. There's obvious plot holes in Harry Potter. I mean, I can't even think of all of them right now. But one thing I really noticed, and again, I'm hating on Half-Blood Prince so much, is that I think Liquid Luck becomes one of the major plot holes throughout the entire series once it's introduced. Because it kind of seems like
it was only
God
the one
mode.
It was only the one bottle, right? I think.
Right.
Yes.
But here's my thing. I relate it back to Polyjuice Potion, especially in the second movie, where these ingredients to make these potions are supposedly readily available. Like, Slughorn in the 6th movie has all the ingredients to make Liquid Luck. So why is Liquid...
It was very difficult to brew, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Like, it took a master potion maker.
Right, and I understand that. But Harry, at least up until Ginny hides it in the Room of Requirement, has the recipe for it. So why not make more of this potion that is supposed to bring you good luck and good fortune? Like,
just like the gold star for Mario. It's like invincibility achieved.
Exactly. Like, it literally is like a cheat code. And they're like, it's never heard of again. They're never considered using it again.
That is a plot hole. I will give you that.
But they also said it's incredibly dangerous in large quantities.
Oh, is it?
Because it's dangerous in large quantities, and it's because, if you're just constantly consuming it, you're going to go through your day or your life thinking that you can't die. You're basically going to think you're invincible.
I see.
And it's going to be an over amount of confidence.
I can just jump off this bridge.
Yeah, I'll be just fine. Yeah, exactly.
So, a hippogriff will save me.
Yes, exactly. And like in your everyday life.
Buckbeak ain't here, buddy.
Goddamn.
Buckbeak's in Tampa Bay. He's on sabbatical. He ain't coming to get you, bro. Enjoy those rocks and those mermaids down there. They're going to eat you up.
No, Buckbeak is just like crying over Sirius's grave.
Shout
out. Too soon.
All these damn pumpkins. All right.
Yes.
Moving right along. What are some of your favorite sequences? And by that, I mean set pieces I'll start this one off. I love the chess game. The chess game is by far, as a huge chess player, I've played chess almost my whole life. I love the chess game. Best chess game Hogwarts has ever seen.
That's where I said that Rupert Grint really shines in Sorcerer's Stone, Philosopher's Stone, whatever. Like, that is his moment right there. I love it.
When he's just like, I'll be a knight. Like, yes!
Yes! Go for it. The chess game, the first time we see Quidditch being played, I think was, just awe-inspiring for a young me. I was all about that stuff. I'll say even though it was very short, I'd say the fight at the end of Order of the Phoenix, and I'll start by when they're in the room with all the prophecies, all the way through where Cornelius Fudge shows up and he just goes, he's back. Like, and he finally rescinds on his kind of, just denying that stuff's going on. I think that's great. It's a very quick moment, but when Harry's going after Snape kills Dumbledore, he's like, how could you? And he's just like, and he tries to use Sectum Sempra on him, and he's like, oh, you're not going to use mine on me, bro. Like, I invented that. That's mine. You can't do that to me. And he's just gone. I thought that was really cool. And I just got to say, the whole end of, I'm talking from the second Harry shows up at Hogwarts in 7 Part 2, and he's like, how dare you stand where he stood, kind of thing. And McGonagall steps out and she's like, psh, 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 like taking him out. From that point all the way until, Neville chops off Nagini's head, I'm there for it the whole way through. I think as much as you really needed a lot of backstory, you needed to have read to really fully appreciate. And I know that's not great with movies. You really want to just get all the emotion from the movies. And I think you do to some extent. That just totally paid off for me. I was there for all of it. But we started the last section. See, we were on number 7 now, so it should be Austin first this time, I believe.
Is it me? Okay, you definitely hit a couple of mine. Again, pulling out my notes. For me, at least, the best sequence throughout the entire franchise is the entirety of the Shrieking Shack.
Yeah,
because you have our 3 main characters, Harry, Ron, Hermione. You have Gary Oldman. You have, I'm going to get his name wrong, David Thewlis, I think his name is.
Yep.
And again, I can't remember Peter Pettigrew's actor's name. And then you have Alan Rickman. And I think just everything happening in that room is so tense, and it's executed perfectly. Because you're just on edge for like the entire
everything changes at that moment too. Like everything, the whole movie was set up one way, and then in the last 20 minutes of that movie, it's like, nope.
Right. It's like the last third of that movie. It's just like things really get going.
Peter Pettigrew is Timothy Spall.
Thank you. Good call.
I know it was said earlier, but it was so long ago. I have horrible memory. That's my personal favorite. You're gonna get the idea that Prisoner of Azkaban is my favorite movie. But the Dementor on the train on the Hogwarts Express, when you first get that shot of it coming into frame and opening the door, that is so eerie. That is so creepy.
Mm-hmm.
The spiders with the Chamber of Secrets with Harry and Ron and the Ford Aguilar. Is that what it is?
Anglia. Ford Anglia. Follow the spiders. Why couldn't it be follow the butterflies?
And then another scene that I thought, this will be my last one. I also had wizard chess. But I think Sirius's death is just done beautifully. And like what really gets me worked up and gets me emotional is seeing characters' reactions to people's deaths. And like just real quick, Gears of War 3, Dom, like watching Marcus react, like that's what gets me worked up. But like how everything just cuts to silence and you just see Lupin holding Harry back from like all this like rage and pain that he's feeling. It's just like because
he just kind of like he gets hit with the Avada Kedavra, so you know he's dead. But then he just kind of like leans back and gets carried away through the veil, and you're like,
yeah. And
what?
in the book, it's very memorable in the book where Harry is having this like I think it is at least an internal debate where like Sirius is going to come back like any minute. Like there's this veil, and like he'll be back like any minute, and he's just waiting and waiting, and like Sirius just doesn't come back.
Well, doesn't he has a conversation with Dumbledore. He's like, wait, but it's nearly headless Nick and all these ghosts. He could come back as a ghost, right? And he's just like, no, nope. And you don't really get a reason why. It's just like not everybody, because he didn't have unfinished business, I don't believe, and stuff like that. I think that's one of the big qualifiers for who gets to stay as a ghost, is like whether or not you accomplished everything. And I mean, Sirius knew that Harry was in good hands, I think. Like, he wasn't there to, by that point, he had his friends, he had the Order. I could probably go on and on, but absolutely, that's a great scene. And as like the split second before he gets hit by Bellatrix, and he's like, you know, him and Harry are like back to back, like going after the Death Eaters, and he's like, nice one, James. And then boom, he gets hit and he's done. It's just like so many emotions. Oh my God.
Yeah, it would have been a real treat to see McGonagall and Harry do the same exact thing in part 2, especially in like the whole Snape and with the what are their names? The Callows, the twins.
The Carrows.
Carrows. Yes. I said, what did I say? Callows. Yeah, it would be nice if like they weren't taken out so quick and just see the two of them. You have head of Gryffindor house, and then you've had this kid who struggled with the identity of being a true Gryffindor or not. Just like duking it out against the bad guys. Like, that would just been a nice little like little cherry on top for me.
I like it. Daniel,
but wishful thinking.
Favorite set pieces?
Well, you already mentioned the chess match. You mentioned the final fight scene of part 2, and those are going to be my two big ones. Although,
can we all agree that the chess scene is probably the best scene? I think
so good,
especially if you're a chess player and you've been playing chess since you're a kid. Like that scene, like seeing something from your childhood incorporated into something else from your childhood. It was really cool. One scene that we haven't mentioned yet, and I suppose this is like more of something in the books that I liked, but something it brought to life on film, was Umbridge being carried off by the centaurs.
Yes.
It just feels like a personal victory, even though you have nothing to do with it.
It might be fan
yes.
It might be fan service, but it was well earned. And in the books too, that they make the coconut sounds, like the clopping, and she's like.
A quick note: I actually have a replica of the chess set.
Do you?
That's nice.
It's not like a legit, like it's like all plastic and everything, like something I probably got at Walmart. But yeah, it's like an exact replica.
I actually think I used to have one of those too. Like, and I think it was like at one of the Christmases that I was at, like with like Wendy and BJ and all, like with everybody. I feel like I got it at that. Like,
I think it was Henry's, but I have a Lord of the Rings one actually sitting right over there that's very, very similar. But yeah, nothing builds tension like potentially seeing an 11-year-old's head get lopped off with a 10-foot steel broadsword. Kevin,
that is how I learned to play chess.
Yeah, hey, and then one wrong move and they were screwed. Like, it was over.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead, Kevin. What do you got?
So this is like simply for the sake of the film, like, because like from reading the books, like it really doesn't make any sense in the film, but it's just a scene that I really grew to love, like in the way that they did it in the movie, was the night bus in the third film, and it's just like, and that thing is just like, take it away, Arnie. You know?
Take it away, Arnie.
like,
little old lady at 12 o'clock.
Yes, exactly. It's just like
the leaky cauldron,
random.
he says.
Yes, the leaky cauldron. Yes. Let's see. What is the other one? I'm gonna say the basilisk in the second film. That whole fight sequence. I mean, Harry has to make sure to like look away, and then Fawkes comes in and saves him. Like by getting his eyes out, and he's like seeing that just in the shadow. Like, that is so well like thought out, and
it's very well choreographed. I mean, that's not the strongest Harry Potter movie, but the third act is very strong, I would say. And I love the character or the design of the basilisk. Like, that thing was imposing.
Oh yes, 100%. Like, I was definitely afraid as a kid. And the other thing too is that what plays a factor in all of that is when he takes that basilisk fang and he stabs that diary, you are seeing for the first time a Horcrux get destroyed. Like, that is like, and that plays a factor later. That's why J.K. Rowling's stuff is so good. She plays elements from the original to the end, and they do portray that in the movie. So I love that they kept that in there, you know?
Oh, 100%. Here's a quick question, because I want to keep this thing moving. We have been hitting this hard, and I love it. I'm here for all of it.
Yeah.
Do you think Michael Gambon did a good job? This can even be a yes or no if you want. Do you think he did a good job filling in for Richard Harris as Dumbledore? I would say yes.
Yes, but real quick, I just want to say the Richard Harris Dumbledore is the Dumbledore that is in my head when I am reading the books.
I would agree with that.
Agreed. I have
any more comments? You got one?
I have one example of where Michael Gambon is a horrible Dumbledore. And this one instance is in the 4th movie when Harry's name gets drawn out of the Goblet of Fire and Michael Gambon runs at Harry. He shakes him, like basically manhandles him, and then is like, Harry, did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire? There is no way that Albus Dumbledore would ever be rough with a student. There is no way that would ever happen.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So that is my one issue with Michael Gambon. Other than that, though, I think he did a good job. Although one person that I would have liked to play Dumbledore after Richard Harris would be Ian McKellen, but he can't be Gandalf and Dumbledore. It would just be too much.
Oh, don't even. Oh, God.
That is a problem.
Nerdgasm.
It is a problem that resonates with a lot of fans, actually. If you go on like top lists of like movie mistakes or film adaptations that are different from the book, like that's on everyone's top 10 lists, where like, because in the book it says Dumbledore asked calmly, did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire? So
Yeah.
All right. Daniel, did you want to touch on that? Did you like Michael Gambon?
You see, so back when I was watching it, back when I was watching the movies, I honestly wasn't like, I honestly didn't really learn anyone's names. You know, I was just watching them for entertainment value. And when they changed Dumbledore up, honestly, I didn't realize until later. I was like reading an article and they're like, oh yeah, halfway through, they had to replace Dumbledore. I'm like, what? And then I went back and watched. I'm like, oh.
Am I mistaken in saying that was why there was a little bit of a delay between 2 and 3? Or is it because they changed directors? I don't really remember. But I feel like there was like an extra year maybe between the two.
I don't know. All I know, I do remember, even being so young, remembering the news broadcast on whatever channel it was at the time, where, you know, Richard Harris has passed away. And I remember my mom telling me all about it too. I don't know if there was any sort of delay.
Yeah, no, Richard Harris is a treasure. Rest in peace, legend. So I'm going to ask these two questions at the same time because I think they really just fit into each other really well. But first off, do you think Deathly Hallows should have been 2 movies? And 2, do you like how it resolves itself at the end of Deathly Hallows Part 2 and just like as the end of the whole franchise, or at least this segment of the franchise? So we'll talk about Fantastic Beasts in just a minute, but do you like how it ended? Do you think that needed to be 2 parts? What say you, Daniel?
So I'm not usually a fan of 2-part movies. You know, I think I touched on this earlier. You know, how I want intermission to come back. You know, for movies, you know, based on books to just be longer because they just have more material. One of the biggest issues I had with the first movie was it ends on such a sorrowful note when Dobby dies, and like. No, I don't want to walk out of the movie theater, you know, being all sad and shit. Like,
you have to wait another year to see what happens.
Yeah.
They don't even bury him for a year. Like,
yeah, no, and so like with Deathly Hallows, I would have preferred for it to be just, you know, one super movie.
I'm with you. If plays on Broadway can be 2 parts at 4 hours apiece in one sitting, give me that. I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Don't let Dobby just be a dead elf for a whole year. Don't do him like that. Kevin, what say you, man?
I was actually for it. Because what I was afraid that they were going to do, I was afraid that they were going to make it too short by trying to squeeze everything into, 2.5 hours. I was afraid that they weren't going to add all the elements that they needed to. And And going off of what Daniel just said, like, yes, that whole like waiting a year thing is awful, but at least we had some knowledge of what was going to happen. If we're going to go into like the nerd spiral here, it's like at the end of Infinity War, we were just like, what the fuck is happening? And we're like, and then like we had to wait for Endgame and like wonder what happened to everybody.
Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good.
All the memes that came out of that.
Oh my god! Yeah, so I think they did. I think it was a good choice to have it in two parts. I think it was. I don't think it was like for a money grab. I think it was because they wanted to do it right.
I would agree with that mostly. I think generally it was because that book is so dense, and because they probably really wanted to go hard with the end of all of it, and they probably, the only way they could finagle that with the executives is say, hey, let's do 2 movies, and that way we can do one that's pretty much all exposition and one that's all spectacle. Would be my take. But Austin, you have any thoughts on that, man?
No, I look at Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2 as like watching like a Broadway production where just you need that intermission, because as much as I love watching Return of the King in all 3 hours and 30 minutes of its glory, it is a long movie. And I think there is so much information in the Deathly Hallows, and there is so much to wrap up and make sure that everything wraps up nicely. You need that extra time to tell the story. And I think Part 1, it's not my favorite movie, of course. But it does show the desperation and the cluelessness that the characters have as to like what they're supposed to be doing. You know, Dumbledore kind of didn't clue them in on really anything. They have nothing to go on other than like, this is what you're doing. And I think to really drive that point home, Deathly Hallows Part 1 had to happen.
I agree.
Very true.
One thing I thought was really interesting that I had read is that it's very, very subtle, but they didn't allow them to like, I'm sure they still went in for makeup and stuff, but they didn't let them cut their hair. They didn't let them shave, all that stuff to really give it the atmosphere that they are on the run, and they're on the run for like a year, like almost the whole year. I'm pretty sure the Battle of Hogwarts happens at the very end of year 7, if I'm not mistaken. Like they've been on the run, just living out in a tent in the wilderness for close to a year at that point, I think, because they've been hunting these things to almost no avail at that point. But great. Moving right along. That was 2 of the questions. This is really quick because I know that I believe, Austin, you said you haven't seen the Fantastic Beasts movies.
No, so I'll probably sit this part out.
Okay. I'll go to Kevin first on this one then. What did you think of those movies? Have you seen them? Thoughts real quick? I mean, not like in depth or anything, but just like, are you a fan? And also, you know, are you excited about, I don't know, anybody's really excited per se, but what are your thoughts on Mads Mikkelsen taking over Johnny Depp's role as Grindelwald?
So the Fantastic Beasts franchise, like I enjoyed the first film, but like I'm also like, anytime they try to like take a Potter universe film, it's always a little like wonky in my opinion. It's like, but no, like I liked the creatures, I liked the general plot of the first, and the second one is like that's all fine and dandy, but like they're trying to, and I guess Rowling is in on this, but like for the second one, what kind of bothered me was like, if there was some like spell or thing that prevented Dumbledore from going after Grindelwald, it's like, well, I don't know. Like, no, like, because what he specifically says in the books is like, he couldn't face Grindelwald because of his own shame, not because of some magical spell. It was his own shame and fear of the fact that, like, one of them killed Dumbledore's sister. It was an accident, but none of them know who it was that killed her. So it was Dumbledore's shame and guilt that prevented him from going to see Grindelwald, not some spell. So the fact that they're trying to, like, play this whole franchise based off of that. Also, if you go and you look at like the memory of Dumbledore in the second movie, like of him like being younger, and it's like, oh wow, you're this young guy in a suit, like in this franchise. It just seems very odd to me. But
because doesn't Harry Potter take place in like the 60s or something? Like it's not very
80s and
modern. Is it the 90s? I mean,
Yeah, I think
late 80s, early 90s. Yes,
I think the Deathly Hallows Part 2 wraps up around the same time that like Sorcerer's Stone is released, like in real world. I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. It seems very modern by the time he's like, in the underground having that conversation with the chick that he gets cock blocked with. But Daniel, any thoughts on Fantastic Beasts as a whole? What do you say?
You see, so I actually really liked the characters, and this might be an unpopular opinion. I liked Newt particularly. I like, that they have someone who's incredibly gentle and is very misunderstood. As the main character. But at the same time, despite him being gentle, he's also out there like going and doing incredibly dangerous things, like to help and basically conserve animals. But yeah, the one major note that I wasn't too thrilled about when I saw the second one was that the first one had a lot of happy in it, and then the second one is a bit murdery. And
there's a ton of fan service in the second one too that felt a little misplaced.
It's like, it was just a very, very stark contrast. Because I saw the first one, and I got in the movie theater watching the second one. I'm like, wow, okay, all right, that's where we're. Cool.
Right. Any other thoughts on that, or not really? I will say that similar to you in the first Fantastic Beasts, my favorite part of it, I think, is the relationship between, I think her name is Queenie, and then whoever Newt's like buddy, the nomad
sidekick.
Yeah, I forget his name, and I forget the actor's name, but he is hilarious. Like every time he shows up in something, Fanboys, Walking Dead, Balls of Fury, he is hilarious. Good luck, Chuck. I mean, that dude is funny. But their relationship is great. The only other thing I'll say about Fantastic Beasts, besides kind of the fan servicey stuff, because I don't know why you necessarily need like Nicola Flamel and Ezra Miller is suddenly a Dumbledore, but he's also this like demonic hell beast thing from the first one and stuff like that. But I think J.K. Rowling had a lot of good ideas. I think she should have really sat down and put them into book form for us to digest before they did them. I think there is that little like 20-page Fantastic Beasts like mini book that's out there somewhere from like way back when, but I think it really would have benefited the audience, I think, a lot to have time to read those books beforehand, because then we're sitting there looking at like, oh my gosh, look at all this stuff that we read about and that, we would have, I think, really appreciated more, because clearly the tapestry and all that is there because they are dense films, but we don't really have that same appreciation just because we haven't had time to sit with the characters and really get into them. And again, there's only so much you can do in what is supposed to be, a 2-hour epic fantasy film. And if there's nothing to build upon besides the fan service of like, oh yeah, here's Grindelwald, here's Dumbledore, and like Newt Scamander, and I don't know, that's my own opinion. And very, very quickly, what are your guys' thoughts on how the fandom, should or shouldn't react to J.K. Rowling's kind of controversies that she's been stirring up over the past couple of years on her, like her transphobic comments and stuff like that? Like, how do you think that, if like, hopefully not a too terribly long dissertation, because I don't want to like dwell on this part of the fandom, but where do you think that fits into everything? Let's start with Austin on this one.
To be honest, I don't have much of an opinion. I don't agree with hers necessarily. I'm in full support of, I guess it was more along the like LGBTQ community. I have absolutely no issue. I'm perfectly fine with that community. I know I'm not trying to throw statistics in here, but I know like the LGBTQ community is obviously a part, not all of it, of course. I'm really trying to, be respectful when I say all this.
Of course.
But I know there are quite a few people of that community that are also Harry Potter fans. And like J.K. Rowling is a role model to these people. So in a way, I understand it probably hurts to hear someone that you look up to, have a different opinion than yours. But at the same time, it is someone's opinion. I'm not trying to defend her. It's so hard to have an opinion because A, I'm not someone that she's referring to specifically when she makes these comments. And B, it's just like, yes, I am a part of the Harry Potter fandom, but it's just like, I don't know.
It's a very nuanced conversation, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Daniel,
it's like,
do you have any thoughts, Daniel?
Well, this is so. I'm going to relate this back to something in the military, actually. So in the military, they're just saying that we don't really. It's like we might not agree with what you say, but we'll fight for your right to defend it. And so, so how I'm going to relate that back to this is, I don't agree with what she says, but at the same time, I enjoy the content that she makes, and it's, and I guess it's kind of, a little bit of a cognitive dissonance, for me, but like at the same time, like I still want to see, like the good that she puts into the world through these Harry Potter books. Like, and so she has this opinion that, a lot of people think of as negative, think of as a bad thing. But she does a lot of good too. And so it's, it's like everything. It's a mixed bag.
Of course. Kevin.
Yeah. I don't have too much of an opinion myself. I know, like, I myself am a very big proponent of the LGBTQ community, and like, it does kind of, I would say, like, yes, it's her opinion. And she's certainly entitled to it, but yeah, it does kind of suck to hear that. But also it's like, it's like you guys were saying, it's like, I love that, I love the world that she's created, and I love all the good that she's done. And it's just like, I don't think that in the statement that she made, like, she's trying to like bring anybody like down with it, or like create some movement to prevent anyone from doing what they want to do. So do I think the statement needed to be said? No, but she is entitled to her opinion. So I feel like I'm kind of in the middle.
Yeah. And it's difficult to really grasp, I think, the magnitude and how it really affects people when a group like us right now are four privileged Caucasian males, not members of the LGBTQ community. So I certainly would not presume to tell anybody how to feel. But just my, armchair quarterback's opinion of it would just be that I think, kind of like you guys said in some ways, but that these movies and this franchise really is so entertaining for a lot of people. It means a lot to a lot of people, and that goes for a lot of different franchises and shows and fandoms across the entire spectrum. There's plenty of knuckleheads who say stupid things, and I will never sit here and defend them, but it was just something that I wanted to get your guys' quick opinions on. I know it wasn't part of the pre-production notes or anything, but I was just very curious, and I think it's, this is the world we live in, and it's important to address these and call people out and hold them accountable where we need to. But last thing I'll say about it, I think there's so many people who work on these projects, whether it's the games, the publishers who do the revisions and everything for these books, and the people, obviously the armies of people who work on these movies. I would be hard pressed to think that they should be penalized by no new content because one lady said some really idiotic stuff. But that's, again, just my opinion, and I welcome everybody to let us know what your opinions are, because this is a conversation I think that needs to be ongoing and a respectful one. I respect everybody's opinion. Hopefully it's something we can address and move on so that we don't run into this kind of ignorance down the road, would be my hope. So quickly moving on to some...
Well said.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Real quick, everybody's pumped for the Hogwarts Legacy video game, I would assume, correct?
Oh my God. I watched the trailer right before this conversation started. And just real quick, my thing is there a gameplay trailer released yet? Or have we just gotten like the teaser trailer?
I think just the teaser. And I think the game got delayed to either I think it's in 2022 now, if I'm not mistaken. But I did want to bring that up because I know I saw that trailer and I was like,
Gotcha.
I'm here for it.
One thing I loved about Skyrim, just a quick tangent, was that world felt lived in. Like you created an avatar for yourself to live in. And if the Hogwarts Legacy game is anything of that caliber of that Skyrim was, I'm all for it. I will sink over however many hours I sank into Skyrim, but in a Harry Potter universe.
Fallout 5, Hogwarts. What is happening? We're gonna wrap pretty soon, so I want to kind of skip past. We were going to talk about what we might want to see out of this recently announced HBO Max series for Harry Potter, which I'm excited to see what comes of that. We don't really have a whole lot of information on that right now, so we're going to probably table that for right now, just so we can get into what is always my favorite part, which is rankings. And I don't necessarily need everybody's full 8 rankings because we're not Count Fantastic Beasts for the purpose of this. I'm mispronouncing things right now. I apologize. But give me top 3 films, top 3 characters, not performances, characters. And I want to start with Daniel on this one. Daniel, take it away.
All right. Top 3 films. Deathly Hallows Part 2, Order of the Phoenix, and Prisoner of Azkaban. For top 3 films. Top 3 characters. See, well, Harry Potter, because she made that character because she made that character for people to relate to, and of course relate to the character. Luna Lovegood for precisely the same reason. And honestly, like I wouldn't have said this a few years ago, but nowadays, Neville Longbottom. Like, just his arc is a beautiful thing.
Tremendous picks all around. Question: expand on what about Order of the Phoenix do you like so much?
You see, I liked how Order of the Phoenix, so before in books 1 through 4, it was kind of just, Harry was kind of just reacting to whatever, Voldemort threw at him. In Order of the Phoenix, it felt, it felt a lot more organized. Harry's, it's not so much a response. It was a, proactive, engagement, to try and fight the Dark Lord. And so I liked watching. I liked seeing that. Also, I liked the battles.
100%. I think 2 of my favorite parts from that movie specifically are, like you were just saying, it's kind of like the Order of the Phoenix is really like the Rebel Alliance of the wizarding world. And I love the fact that not only was it like being restarted and kind of reorganized in that book, but also like the history of the Order and like who was actually a part of it. Like that Wormtongue was in the Order and like Snape was in the Order at one. It's craziness. I love that kind of stuff. But also, I think Dumbledore's army isn't something we really touched on, but that is probably one of my favorite things.
Yes.
And the meme, obviously, that comes out of Dumbledore being like, I think you are laboring under the delusion that I'm going to come quietly. Smack. One of the greatest 10-second scenes. But anyways, Kevin, top 3 movies, top 3 characters, fire away.
Okay, I'm gonna go with 1, 2, and 4 for my favorite movies. Just the first 2 really embody the essence of Harry Potter to me. And then when you get into the 4th, yes, obviously there's the element of darkness, but the whole Triwizard Tournament scene, I wanted to see that so badly, what they were going to do with it, putting it in a film. And I think they really nailed it, with the Triwizard Tournament. I loved, the fact that he's he's flying around a dragon and he's diving into a lake with all the, we loved that stuff reading it. And then we got to see it on screen and just the maze. It was amazing.
What was it? The Hungarian horntail? Was that what he?
Correct. Yep.
Oh man, what a great sequence that was.
I know.
Pull the dragon out of the bag and see what's going to eat you.
yeah, exactly. I love that. Oh my gosh. And it was like, I didn't know that they were going to have it where like they were like live dragons. So that was a nice touch in the film. Cause I think in the books, they were just like statues of them, but yeah, like these moved. I love that.
Just why wouldn't they? I mean, wizard's chess and paintings and everything. It all makes so much sense.
Exactly. And then I'll go 3 favorite characters. I'm going to say probably my number 1 is Ron. Just for all the reasons we said earlier, just wonderful. And, Rupert Grint played him so well. And, but, and then, Harry is definitely my second. And then, through and through, I gotta say, I loved Emma Watson as Hermione, so I will say that the main 3 are my favorites.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
I think it's fair.
Question for you: do you think the first 2 you hold in such high regard because they probably hold the most nostalgia? And I would say probably, other than maybe the last 4 films that David Yates, I think, did all 4 of those. I think those 2 are more of a piece than the rest, because they're just like so tonally similar. And what do you think any of that plays into it, that they're probably you've sat with them the longest?
Yes, the nostalgia factor is definitely big for me. This is something like with Christopher Columbus directing them, I think that it does play like, he directed some of the great like family movies that we know, and I consider those 2 movies like very like family oriented in watching them. So there is that theme in those of like that, and just like the authenticity of like, having them all wear the Hogwarts robes, like very, very strictly. Like, and then something that was strange to me in the other films is like the layout of Hogwarts and the grounds was one way in the first 2. And then all of a sudden the third comes in and all of a sudden the entire layout of Hogwarts is completely changed. And you're just like, what is happening with this layout of Hogwarts? But anyway, yeah, I think that plays a huge part in it. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. I was going to say something else, but I totally forgot about. Oh, just the fact that, I mean, like, as we've touched on it, but as you go along in the movies, they get darker and darker and darker until like the last 10, 15 minutes of part 2 of book 7. They get really, really dark. So those first 2 were really the like most accessible for the younger audience, especially like, the under 13 audience, I think, because I could watch those. I could probably show both of those to my 4-year-old and be okay. But you go past that.
I will say though, when I first saw the first one in theaters though, I was scared of Voldemort coming out the back of, what's his face? Quirrell's turban. So like there were scary elements in all of them, actually, and the basilisk in the second. I mean, there were suspenseful scenes in both of those. But it's the fact that like, and I think the scariest part is not just the out of the head, but you think Voldemort is gone, and the next thing you know, there's that like, and the ghost is like coming at him. Like, so that scared me as a kid too. So.
And it's totally different now seeing them for the first time on a home theater. Even I have a really good home theater, but even that is not the same as seeing it in like a Dolby surround sound theater as like a 10-year-old. Yeah. Yes. And I remember I heard about the Voldemort eating the unicorn's blood, and I was like, what are we getting into? And that was...
Oh, that was scary. That was a scary sequence too. That was scary.
Yeah. Austin.
Okay, I'm going to break the rules a little bit. I'm going to give you all 8 films, but I'm only going to elaborate on why number 1 is my number 1.
Fair enough.
So I have Half-Blood Prince, Deathly Hallows Part 1, Order of the Phoenix, Deathly Hallows Part 2, Chamber of Secrets, Philosopher's Stone, Goblet of Fire, Prisoner of Azkaban, from worst to best. The reason I really love Azkaban so much, and it really does flip-flop between that and Goblet of Fire, is that's where I think that the series as a whole really got the ball rolling. And I think more was introduced into the world rather than just the magic of the world that is Harry Potter. It's like the first 2 movies are all about the magic and establishing like Hogwarts as a setting and just the world that we will exist in for the rest of the movies. But Prisoner of Azkaban introduced like lots of tension and like even death and backstabbing and snitching. No pun, of course. But that's when I think like, okay, the situation's actually getting serious. Like Harry is in for more than he's bargaining for right now. And it's where like a lot of characters who will eventually play bigger parts in later movies really start to come into the picture. So, and then as far as characters go, I had 4. I'll just say Luna, Hagrid, Sirius, and Lupin are like my top 4. I think Hagrid is one of the most symbolic characters of especially the early movies. I would say actually the first movie in particular kind of belongs to Hagrid. Yeah. I love Luna. She's so quirky, but she's so witty and weird. And I think she was a very nice addition. She really gave Harry someone to relate to for the first time, I feel, where she's like, I think she's where when he meets the Thestrals the second time in the Forbidden Forest, where she says, "You're just as sane as I am."
Yes.
But like you hear that coming from Luna and you're like, what? you're just so out there.
What did she say? I think Narflats or whatever are. What was you saying? Nargles.
Nargles. Yeah, Nargles. Yes.
I suppose, or it's like I predict Nargles are responsible.
Yeah.
Would you like
She's
a Quibbler?
So out there. I love her.
I'm so glad that they included her giant like Gryffindor lion head that she wears at the Quidditch games. Like that was such a good deep cut. But real quick for me, I will just say, and there is just a never-ending list of honorable mentions for my favorite characters and stuff. But my top 3 characters have to be Voldemort in no particular order. Voldemort, I love Voldemort so much just because he's such an interesting character. Dumbledore, because it's Dumbledore and there's so much we still don't even know about him, and he was such a huge part of these. And anytime there's like an old wizard type, whether it's Obi-Wan Kenobi or Gandalf, that's my dude.
Yes.
And then I'm sorry, but Emma Watson and Hermione Granger is bae. Like, she's the Princess Leia of this franchise. She's so smart. She's so like able and just like they don't survive the first movie, let alone all 7 without her. Like they're dead. They're dead in the oh gosh, what is it? The Devil's Snare?
Devil's Snare, yes.
They're dead in the Devil's Snare.
Yep.
They're just done. But yeah, and then as far as the movies go, I have to say 3 would be Goblet of Fire, 2 is Deathly Hallows Part 2 because there's just payoffs galore in that. And then 1 is Prisoner of Azkaban. I mean, I think Alfonso Cuarón, he did change everything, and it was very shocking. It's still shocking to watch 1, 2, and then you jump to 3, and it's like, what? Like, did somebody, like, whoever the land, like, I mean, technically Hagrid is the lands or the groundskeeper and everything, but it's like, did he just get like really drunk one day and like just bridge something else, like just totally remodeled everything? But Prisoner of Azkaban is where it's actually the only one. Like Voldemort is like he's a character in the sense of like his legacy and everything is present, but that's the only one that he's not in. Yes. And I think that's why it's so interesting, is because like that's one of the few opportunities in the entire series that's not like Harry versus Voldemort. This is Harry versus like who he thought killed his parents or thought sold him out, but it's not them. And as a matter of fact, it was their other best friend who has been Ron's rat this whole time for 2 movies.
Yes.
Like one of the original, a younger Spencer's mind just like exploding. Like what's an animagus? Like, wait, Scabbers is a snitch? Like it's just,
yes.
wait,
and then,
Ron, doesn't your rat has one missing toe or something? Like,
yeah. The middle finger. But also the whole, the time turner aspect of that, like reading that as a kid was like mind blowing. I was like, they're going back in time. What? Like,
well, and you legit, in the movie specifically, you legit think Buckbeak's dead for about 20 minutes, and then they go and they save him. And, I mean, we didn't even really get into it. I wish I would have thought to ask, like, creature designs and stuff, but hippogriffs and Buckbeak specifically, like that's one of the best, most iconic, I would say, character designs of the whole franchise. But any other quick honorable mentions before we wrap this, boys?
I have a quick question, if I may. It can be a simple yes or no. That's fine. At the end of Deathly Hallows Part 2 with the Resurrection Stone, do you think anyone is missing from that scene in particular? When you have Remus, Sirius, James, and Lily, do you think anyone is missing, or like, do you think that was perfect the way it was?
I'd say it's perfect because he talks to Dumbledore in like the World Between Worlds type train station that he's at. And that would be the only other one I would think of that needed to be there. Maybe Snape, but that's
what I was going to ask.
He just had that moment with him, so I tend to think no. I tend to think
as like maybe a moment of like reconciliation or forgiveness. Like, I've kind of thought you were a terrible person this whole time, but actually you were really on.
Those four people were the ones who he was most closely connected with, not the ones who looked out for him the most. Like, Snape looked out for him a lot, but like, so did Tonks, so did Mad-Eye Moody, so did, who died? Fred or George? I can't remember. Fred dies. I mean, you could make the argument that there could have been like a whole posse of like 20 people there, but I think the symmetry looked good. But anyways, thank you guys. Kevin, Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. It has been such a pleasure. You'll have to come back and we'll have to do this more. We're going to hopefully find some time to do these movies one by one because there's just so much to cover. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to everybody who's watching. Have a great night. Peace.
Have a magical night.
Bye, guys.
Thanks so much, guys.